Very good evening to all. Welcome all to another session of the Friday Water Thesis Club. The Friday Water series is an extension of the flagship program Wednesday for Waters of the W4W Foundation. The idea of Friday Water is to wet the Fridays with fun-filled and yet fruitful activities for the future generation. Friday Water series is water talks, book reading, thesis club, water arts, and meet a maestro, some of them taking place once a month depending on the speaker's availability. The focus of the thesis club is on bringing students and scholars who have done or are researching some aspects of water matters to the session in order to discuss with them their identified problem in objective methodology, research, design, fieldwork, findings, and learning. In the process, know about the making of the research and the contribution it aims to make in science and society. The session is also meant to increase the outreach of research and the researcher. My name is Ekta, and today I am the host for the session on public spaces along shoreline, experiencing urban beaches and waterfronts. I am now I am joined by Dr. Mansee Bal Bhargava from W4W Foundation as discussant for today's session. For today's session, we welcome Mr. Khanal to share a topic related to his PhD research. The title of his presentation today is Public Spaces Along Shoreline, Experiencing Urban and Waterfronts. Welcome again, Asim Khanal. Now I invite Mansee to introduce the speaker and the rules of the presentation. Over to you, Mansee.
Thank you so much, Ekta, and it's really pleasure to have you as a backbone of this Friday Water Thesis Club. And thank you so much, Asim Khanal, to accept our invitation. And it's really reconnecting with you after the Hyderabad workshop and looking forward to your presentation. But before I invite you to make the presentation as a protocol, I'm also going to read out your biography and also set the rules of the game. Asim Khanal is an urban planner and researcher interested in understanding how diverse user groups are actually looking at the water systems and experience public spaces along the shorelines. He intends to push the theoretical interpretation and practical implementation of access by integrating the dimensions of vision and touch. In his doctoral dissertation, he also uses third-party big data to estimate spatio-temporal use dynamics of urban waterfronts, both in the natural and the built environments. Asim completed his Bachelor's of Civil Engineering from Punjab Engineering College, Chandigarh in India, and an MSc in Sustainable Critical Infrastructure from Masdar Institute in Abu Dhabi, which has opened its collaboration in the MIT in Boston. He has worked as an urban planner for federal, provincial, and local governments in Nepal and as a planning researcher in the UAE. Asim, welcome once again, and we look forward to really having your presentation in the format as I'm going to set it now. And also thank you for sharing your presentation. It is really touching subject for me, especially waterfront, as in India, we are on a basically on a fast track, I must say, to develop nearly 108 waterfronts, as I learned from our big policymakers. Your presentation looks attractive and visually very rich. It also seems that theoretically and conceptually well grounded with some new concepts. I invite you to give your presentation for around 20 to 25 minutes. After that, we shall post some queries and comments and further take the same with the participants present here. Thank you so much, all the participants. As you all know, we have also crossed 100 sessions in Friday Waters and looking forward to keep it going stronger and stronger with every session going. Over to you, Asim, and the screen is yours.
Thank you, Mansee, for such a wonderful introduction and for inviting me. So without further ado, I will share my screen and start the presentation. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
But okay, wait, I need to share with sound. Sorry, just a small
Yes.
glitch. Probably I did not. Okay, it was selected actually. Sorry. Um, so topic for today is public spaces along shoreline, experiencing urban beaches and waterfronts. And I work at UBC Vancouver. And instead of the agenda slide, the agenda will be clear from this video. That's my understanding. So just a few seconds video. All right. Sorry. So after that, um, the agenda is clear. There are urban areas and there are waterfronts. And although in this case a beach is shown, no city, no big city in the world has thrived without any water body ever in the history. You could say there are some highway towns or mining towns, but those are aberrations. Largely, urban areas are always beside a water body, be that a river, a lake, a big lake, or coastal lines. And in this case, you could notice probably that there are built areas, there are urban skyline in the backdrop, there's some greenery. So, like this is the new reality for many urban areas. We need to think carefully how we balance the usage of water for human consumption, just recreation, and that's my focus. I only study as of now from the human recreation angle. But why do we need to study them? And to begin with, what are shoreline public spaces? Hopefully, everyone here is aware, but not everyone who watches this or other people may not be aware. So, my definition is any publicly accessible shoreline, coastal and non-coastal, are shoreline public spaces, and we need to study them because recently, in the past decade, there have been a lot of rise in studying green spaces, and urban parks and so on and so forth, urban forests. But these shoreline public spaces or waterside public spaces, or some people call it blue-green spaces, are not studied enough. And these are different in a lot of notable ways from your average green spaces because they are geographically predefined, inflexible. You cannot create them the same way you would create an urban park, for example. And this you could maybe, but you need lot more engineering and hydrological studies and years of um, dedication. So and there are studies comparing the benefits on humans, health benefits, and perceptive mental, restoration benefits, which are a lot more sometimes comparatively with an average green space versus a waterside public space. But the number of studies you see is not as per the importance. So based on that, I have four interrelated, but I guess pretty varying, research objectives in my dissertation. First, I'm trying to understand what factors, both environmental and perceptual, influence visits to these shoreline public spaces. And this I'm doing by um, like conducting a scoping review of literature, and that's the majority of today's presentation. I'm sharing some findings from my scoping review, and in my second chapter, I'm also trying to understand values and meanings people place on these spaces, and what influences their visit motivations, and what barriers they experience in accessing these spaces, and what negotiations, if any, they do to still go to these places. So this is more qualitative, and I'm conducting walking interviews. And this is not part of this presentation, unfortunately, because I am still scheduling my interviews. And then I also look at the census data and link it with multidimensional accessibility that I'm introducing by incorporating access to vision and access to touch. And then I am also utilizing some big data, third party big data, as in the location check-ins that you give access to from your phones. Those can be sold by these companies. So I'm using that anonymized data and linking it with how the use changes spatio-temporally within a big shoreline public space like a riverfront, which could stretch for like kilometers sometimes, or other smaller places through time. So without further ado, I will just briefly show you what keywords I used for my scoping review. So I searched two databases, Scopus and Web of Science, as there were already so many duplicates, and adding another database was not really suitable or recommended from my supervisory committee. And so I used type of site, beach, blue space, waterfront were the dominant ones, and these already gave me results for lakefront, riverfront, and everything else, promenades. And I used use, visit, or space um, defining, features like popular, vibrant, equity, equitable, just, diverse, inclusive, recreation, and just common terms like volume, visit, use. So I ended up with 37,000 records from both. And after removing duplicates, also, there were like 18,000 papers. And because they were papers, studying beach sand size, grain size, and all those nitty gritty from geomorphology to some very qualitative, aesthetic, experiential papers, just solely mental effect of beaches and water, hearing water. And so there were very broad variety of papers, but for this review, I was focused on only papers that discuss the factors that affect the visits and motivation to visit. So any visit related variable. And then for this analysis, I ended up having 44 papers after a rigorous full text review of 84. And before that, titles were removed and then abstract. Um, so my preliminary findings are the trend of publishing for shoreline public spaces, and often in literature they call it urban blue spaces, but that's not the term I prefer. And so it's increasing, and the dip in 2024 is just due to the timing of the data collection when I stopped. And the locations wise, there are a lot of papers studying waterfronts and how people use it through space and time in China. So China is topping the list in terms of study sites. These are not the location of the authors, but actual study sites. And US is still second, UK third, and there are a lot of small countries from Spain, Scotland, Germany. There are study sites from, and but interestingly also from South America, Brazil, Guyana, and there is Ecuador. So yeah, there are people studying um, blue spaces and what factors affect the visits. And continents wise, Europe is top of the list, followed by Asia and North America closely. Um, and journals wise, so I can say that I'm still a planning scholar because the most of papers are still from landscape and urban planning, followed by ocean and ocean and this land is also there, and then also there is International Journal of Environment and Public Health. So keywords that authors have used. So because I used the phrases as keywords, not just single words, and there were a bunch of papers from COVID post pre-use analysis. COVID-19 is dominant after blue space tourism, uh, and then green space lockdown, visitation, big data, and you can also see smaller public participations and like satisfaction, and there is justice, environmental justice, um, and more nitty gritties of my analysis. So there were very unique dependent variables, indicators of use and visits. So I had to group them, categorize them. So type one are volume based indicators like number of visitors, number of visits, social media activity, user density, and these are like compared across sites. So these are volume based, and the data used for each type of indicator are, for example, for mobile GPS site observation, which is still like traditional method, but camera recordings from both webcam and drones are also being used nowadays. Number of visits, again, GPS data was used in one of the papers, and social media activity. Baidu is a platform in China, I guess, and Flickr, Instagram, I think we all know. So these sites used to sell at some point. I think Instagram still does. You can buy data, anonymize data from them, and analyze it. And some papers have been doing that. And again, density of users is similar to number of visitors, but here they take into account the area of the site and compare large number of sites. And so all of these indicators basically indicating how and when people use shoreline public spaces. These visits and indicators of use are affected by four category of factors. And the first one that I have here, like I have here, is individual characteristics, and this kind of includes also attitudes and perception what people have. So, for example, it's like very socio-demographic indicator. For example, like are you a local or national or international? And some papers have noted how there is a clear pattern how locals use are more interested in quieter spaces, natural beaches versus tourists attracted to more like places with a lot of facilities and commercial activity happening around them. And so, as I was saying, individual factors also represent your experience of catering, tourism, entertainment. So, your experience is subjective. It could differ from person to person, and so that individual experience also because it's coming from social media activity, right? So, if someone is from their caption, textual analysis, we can say someone is really excited or not so excited. And age and gender also plays a role according to some studies. Social media check-in is different for different genders, and in some cases the old people are most like represent the highest proportion of visitors. And the second type of factors that affect shoreline public spaces visits and their use are the actual site features. So 7 out of 11 papers found facilities as a significant factor, and that includes everything like if it's a big waterfront space like the one I showed you in the beginning, the way there is a built area, but there's also a beach and everything. So if there is just a promenade where you can walk, but you cannot really, there's no beach. So that apparently affects how significantly higher number of people use it throughout the time. And non-motorized vehicle lanes. So are there jogging tracks, hiking trails, within that space? These features can significantly increase how many people come, and it's pretty obvious. But it's interesting to note. And one interesting fact is because I focus only on places where there are significant water body, shoreline public spaces, it seems like people visiting these spaces don't care so much about greenery. So more green is actually it's not translating to more people according to two studies. So and one study says that their interpretation is that maybe higher greenery may restrain the liveliness that they relate with water, which is interesting. And visual accessibility of water surface. This is very scarce in literature as of now, according to my search. People only talk about reaching the place, but not so much about what they see when they reach the place. Um, so the third type of factor that affects is external built environment, and this is just a break from my white slides. So this is an actual beach in Vancouver, and it's pretty popular. As you can see, there's a boat launch area where you can rent kayaks, and it's a pretty nice, cozy beach. It's and surrounded by a lot of greenery parks here, and then a residential area. So access to public transit affects um, how many people use this space, how often, and these are the actual bus stops here. And I would say it's average in terms of Vancouver's beaches. This is not highly connected. And distance to CBD, Central Business District, downtown, as we call it, also affects the use because there are a lot of visitors, tourists coming to these spaces who are not local residents walking to the space. So how far you are from from a city center always affects the visits. And density of restaurants in particular has been highlighted by studies, and it's not just random commercial activity that we lump sum maybe, but restaurants, eating outlets really affect beach visits, in at least from my search. I'll not spend so much time here because this is pretty obvious, but again, it's a factor we should acknowledge. Time of day, day of the week, and season definitely affects how many people use it and how often. And early morning is popular according to many studies for various activities, from people as passive as just watching the sunrise and people walking to very active users like surfers and swimmers. And so moving forward, type 2, these are indicators which are more behavioral and preference based. So things like blue space choice, what makes people choose one beach rather than the other, or go to a promenade rather than a beach, and how much time you spend in that space, how frequently do you go, if you are a first time visitor, do you have an intention to revisit, or if you are someone who frequents it, what motivates you to come every time, and what are your favorite or spots you avoid in the same space if it's big enough. So these are some interesting indicators. Um, and in most cases, you will notice surveys, interviews are used because these are individualistic and qualitative in nature. So you need to understand. So surveys and interviews are still the dominant ways to know it. But GPS data uses a term they call dwell time. So it's like a signal on your phone. If it's longer than 5 minutes in a place, it will record you there. So that can give us some estimation of how long people are spending, which is interesting. And PPGIS is an upcoming tool, as you can see both here in Blue Space Choice and Activity Hotspots. We can use it. It's a public participatory geographic information system. I think we all know GIS, but PPGIS is participatory version of it, and it's a very co-creative. We invite users, and then they can map with our with some expert guidance. So it's very collaborative in nature. So same, but there are a lot of indicators I just shared in the last slide, but I'll be only sharing results related to visit frequency due to limitation of time. And in 9 studies that studied visit frequency and the factors that affect it, surveys and interview was the dominant form of inquiry, and participant ranged from 203 to 5,000 plus. And again, so there are 4 categories of factors that affect the visit frequency, and some interesting ones. I'm only showing selected ones. These are not the only factors that affect it. Family type, and there is like a mixed result here. Some studies saying that fewer children, more use of beaches, but other one is saying if you have children that are going to preschool and primary, so basically small children, you will use it more. So kind of not the same thing. And one study is saying there's no relationship. They didn't found any significant relationship um, between visit frequency and having children in the household. And duration of residence, how long you have lived in the area if you are a local, um, and place of origin, even if you are a long-term like resident, or maybe you are a citizen of that place now, but your place of origin and the values you bring with it also affects. So native born people always use beach more in Los Angeles. This paper studied LA's beaches. And your experiences in childhood, the orientation, interaction you have with nature, always the more interaction, more exposure in childhood, more frequency of visits, according to a paper. And this is a direction a lot of health and place papers are also kind of stressing indirectly. Continuing with it, this is, I'll not spend so much time because this is kind of obvious, but people with animal right concerns and who donate to these kind of organizations have a more visit frequency. People who report um, uh, higher satisfaction have more frequency. And but interestingly, self-reported health was not associated with frequent visits. um, it was specifically for fresh water, but still. um, and so an interesting trend was also that the papers that study more qualitative indicators, more behavioral and preference based indicators, haven't really talked about factors of the site or external built environment or even temporal. So it's all together. This is due to lack of factors. This is not me selecting few factors. So cleanliness and maintenance was mentioned, and it's pretty obvious. Uh, Perceived safety affects the visit frequency, proximity to beaches, and time of day. But nothing out of the ordinary. So they are mostly focused on personal factors. So key takeaways from my scoping review is there are disparate set of indicators and data types being used to study visit patterns and how urban blue spaces, shoreline public spaces are used. Number of visitors, I'll not go into detail right now. Personal factors, including perception and attitude, and internal site, surrounding environment, and temporal factors all contribute. And this is something I've already told, so I'll skip to this is a work in progress. So there could be a few more interesting factors. And I'll move on to my other big part. I don't have many slides left, but my conception of multidimensional accessibility is that you reach a place, and especially with shoreline public spaces, you are there almost all the time for water, at least seeing it or touching it or appreciating it. So you should have a good view and you should be able to touch it if you want. Um, and so I have study sites in of Metro Vancouver region. Um, from city of Vancouver is here. There is a big upcoming city, Surrey, which is about to actually be more populated than city of Vancouver in the recent future, upcoming future. And there is the US Canada border, if you are curious. So we are very near the border. And so there are 116 beaches and waterfronts, and it includes riverfronts like you see here, if you can see my mouse moving, and here, and some other lake shores over here. Um, so my conception, as I briefly mentioned, is how access to reach, access to see or view, and access to touch water bodies in shoreline public spaces is affected by socioeconomic status and race and ethnicity. But I would like to say that just calculating and making an aggregate indicator for multidimensional accessibility in itself is a task. So that's why I am in that stage of my work. But I'll share some plan I have how I'm relating it to socioeconomic status and race ethnicity. So accessibility to reach, my conception is simply number of physical access points per unit area to balance the big and small spaces I have to make it like comparable. And for accessibility to view, I'm using geodesic view set analysis on ArcGIS. So this gives you view shed areas, and you can compare which points within a space and across spaces are have more better view. And it uses elevation data if you're curious. And accessibility to touch. Uh, this is my own conception. There is no precedence I have found in journal articles, at least. So length to perimeter ratio of shoreline public spaces. And when I say length, it is the touchable shoreline length and the perimeter of the space land buffer. So that's my conception. Um, and so far, like scholars I have interacted with kind of agree. So I think I would love to hear more about this actually from the attendees. And socio-demographic variables, I'm using the Canada-wide census dissemination area, which is the smallest area of governance in Canada. And there is an inbuilt data set that gives these socio, variables in ArcGIS now. It's called ArcGIS Enrich. And if you have a pro license, you can access, I think worldwide they have it to some extent. Diving more into detail, I don't have many slides left. Median household income, average property value or rent you're paying per percent is people in poverty. So Canada has its own low income cutoffs that indicate poverty. And also I've kept spending 30% or more income on shelter costs, that's like rent, which is kind of more commonly used affordability indicator worldwide. Bachelor's degree or higher. So we want to see some if there is a some pattern with education level and access. And then race ethnicity wise, there are visible minority, and it's defined by Canada in terms of there are some categories like Asian descent from China, South Asia, and people who are considered visible minority. And this does not include indigenous people. So indigenous people are separate, although literary. I mean, if you are going into the literary sense of visible minority, they could be one, right? So um, expected outcomes from this multidimensional access study. I have some hypothesis, let's say. So the accessibility to waterfronts could be directly proportional to socioeconomic status as represented by median household income. It could be better, the access could be better for particular race ethnic group like white Caucasian, because these have been the results from similar studies before for green spaces. And inequity in access to urban waterfronts, including beaches, varies according to types of accessibility too. So I feel physical accessibility could be a lot easier than having visual and haptic accessibility. This is my hypothesis. Um, and in summary, I feel so urban water recreation in public spaces along shorelines have not received adequate attention in urban nature research and planning practice because we are overwhelmingly towards green spaces, and that's going in the direction of forests and national parks, which is nice. No complaints, but this is being overlooked, is my claim. And the access to, the use of, and the experience in these spaces needs to be understood for maximizing public benefits and equity. And the there is highly multidisciplinary nature of these spaces, and which has led to, I can say this about Nepal. So water infrastructure, ecologists, planners, landscape designers, sociologists, they all work in silos. They barely interact, and there is no in-depth and comprehensive study on accessibility. And this is just very transport planner dominant field because road networks and whatnot. And I come from such a background from civil engineering, so I know. And yeah, so that's the presentation I had. Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Asim. If I may request you to please close the PowerPoint and we'll take it from here. Thanks a lot for this wonderful presentation. And was really looking at it and thinking which all beaches I have gone, because you also made me rethink the way we have to classify waterfronts, you know, because when I was talking to you earlier to set the session, I had a different imagination, but when I saw your presentation, it gave me much more clarity, and also it reinstated the point when you mentioned that there is so much of focus on greening the city, in looking at urban parks and gardens and forests and even riverfronts for that matter. And somewhere, especially those coastline cities, have been lesser part of the scholarship in urban design and planning, and also architecture for that matter. So, thank you so much, first of all, to highlight this aspect, that this is a why is a large scope to bring it into the architecture planning and urban design studies. Now, I'll come to some of the questions here, and I request, because I have very interesting professors here who have been working with students for all their lives. So Hina and Ritu, please join in this conversation. Let's have it as a jury kind of conversation. We have it in studio. Just feel free, barge in. I'm going to start with a method question with you, Asim. And I understand today you focused only on the research question one, just to give us an overview. And also, I am aware that you are at an early stage of your research. So, if you can, for the record's sake, if you can tell us, and also the young researchers who would use your discussion here, what exactly is scoping uh, a method? And because you used a qualitative way of scoping, but at the same time, your analysis came out in a very mixed quantitative way. And importantly, I also like the way you are classifying the population. And is it for the scoping, and how that classification is going to help? And I want to give a background why I am asking this question. There was a film made in Ahmedabad on love at Sabarmati. So after the riverfront is done, the socio-economic profile of people who visit riverfront has completely changed. The activity has, of course, changed. And that is where I am keen to understand from your study, especially in Canada, how would you really see, first of all, scoping as a method, and how the richness of information you are expecting by doing this socio-economic classification.
Yeah, thank you. I guess the variation is less notable compared to India, probably Indian cities here,
Mm,
but still, I think there is a wide income gap in a place like Vancouver. You know, there are like
mhm,
multimillionaires, billionaires living here, and then also people struggling day to day life still.
uh,
And interestingly, the access to reach would not be terrible except for interior neighborhoods because there are a lot of beaches. The coastline is very vast, and we are blessed with also rivers here in this province and lakes. So you could reach with some effort one water body,
or the
but it
other.
would be, yeah, or the other, but it may be really small one, not a big one, no beach. You know, there would be very limitations to what kind of space you reach, right? So my angle is more towards the qualitative um, satisfaction aspect because I'm interviewing people as well. But with the economic indicators, I think I'll only be able to find a pattern of size of water bodies they reach, size of length of beach coastline they reach, or there could be there are third party rating systems which are pretty popular like blue flag. So if some beaches are awarded blue flag, so that's kind of an indicator, makes
Mm,
our job easier. That's an indicator of high facilitative, like very facilitative place or something. So maybe the people from low economic neighborhoods and places in the interior will not reach to these blue flag awarded beaches.
mm,
And yeah, so there is some background to lived experience as well, because you kind of see very nice beaches are beside very posh neighborhoods, even in Vancouver.
Okay.
Yeah, like not all of them, but there are some enough cases that it makes you think, is this an issue? And definitely Surrey is the, let's say, the capital of immigrants in this region, in this Metro
Yes.
Vancouver region. And Surrey has just one small pond in between and and a riverfront in the north. There is not really, there are two three big beaches on one side, but it's very less compared to the lower mainland, which is where I am, and the university is. So there are some indicators of how it could be did, it could be a problem. So I'm interested to find out.
Interesting. You remind me of an example of Rio de Janeiro when I was there to travel, and the density of favelas are so high at that by the afternoon you start seeing that everyone is heading towards the beach, and in the evening it was like crowded place, and probably Ritu can add here our the entire Mumbai front, beach front is almost equal crowded as a marketplace by the evening. And I have experienced that in Chennai, Mumbai, and Rio de Janeiro. To be honest, only these three places. So when you have this kind of public space, which is yet to be fully explored in our discipline, the use of methods which you are mentioning, I'm very curious. Maybe Ritu, would you like to throw some light on the accessibility aspect and the methods which Asim is trying to explore? Go ahead.
Hi, Asim. Thank you for your
Hi.
presentation. I just finished my defense, so I'm just on the
Congratulations.
side. Thank you. So, the point which I'm trying to extend from Mansi is that when you talk of such waterfronts, it's good that you are considering the qualitative aspect, but that was a concern because mostly you're taking the quantitative analysis as a basis for qualitative aspects, apart from a survey, which you're doing personally.
Mhm.
There is there, so there you will have to have a very thin balance about the qualitative and the quantitative mixing together. That was one concern. Second thing is, when you talk of shorelines, are you also considering the climate change aspect? Like maximum shorelines are facing this rising water level issue, and also facing the issue of the number of people who want to actually experience water. So how it is, whether it's safe, not safe, whether they want families to actually go there and experience, because like Mansi mentioned Chennai, but I know that our east coast in India has a very, very unpredictable way in which water or high tide rises and goes down. And there have been examples of many mishaps happening because of this thing. And there is no readiness as far as such things are concerned in common people. So, are you also looking at this aspect in your study?
Unfortunately, no, just because of the scope of it. I'm focusing only on human recreation for my dissertation, but like you said, it's one of the growing concerns and aspect of waterfront use which we are not able to ignore worldwide. And even in riverfronts, there are flooding in Nepal so frequently now than when I was a child. There's just like all over there are disasters are increasing. But I see this as a future research. Both like I would like to take this opportunity to say that I feel like my dissertation will lead to, there are a bunch of pathways I can take, or parallelly I might be able to explore them if I find such an opportunity. Is one is disaster, like mitigation, with regards to climate change, sea level rise, how human recreation I understood to some extent from my dissertation, right? But what next? How to invite other people who are not visiting, because I'm only concerned with people who are visiting already, kind of. But those who are not visiting, how to invite them? That's one way, one pathway I see. The other pathway I see is I'm studying what factors affect people's decision to visit and spend more time, come frequently, visit back again. But that will lead to human mental, physical well-being. There's a wealth of work happening in that front, public health. That's one way. How do I take the visits, further to human well-being from my own understanding? And then I think the third one is towards integrating more senses. Like I'm just integrating vision and touch right now, but there is hearing water also soothing your senses, your anxiety, and just smelling flowers kind of thing. Maybe you smell water. Some places may have your, relation with smelling water even. And if it's polluted like Hyderabad, you are chased away by the smell. So, so I'm trying to that's one of the pathway I see. So integrating all senses in access, the concept itself, because you just reach a place and do what? I mean, you don't see anything, or you cannot touch water. You see it from 4 feet away. So I feel, yeah. So that's definitely one of the pathways I see, like including climate change and then the other two I mentioned.
You touched a chord of me here when you really talked about Hyderabad here also, because my next question was on the model which you are trying to build on three types of access. But you have already partly raised that point through Ritu's conversation, when you have this access to reach, which is more of a planning thing, that how public transport is supporting all strata of the society to reach to the place, but access to see, once you are there, what do you see, what do you not see, and so on.
Yeah.
But the access to touch, when I look at riverfronts and lakefronts now in India, it's almost like, I mean, Ritu can also intervene, and even Hina. It seems that there is an unsaid fixed rule now that you should not be touching the water. The whole riverfront, lakefront, I don't know who is writing the policy document or who is doing the initial conceptualization. Earlier, the river is approachable, accessible, but once the riverfront is done, you are not supposed to do. And that was the beauty of the work, the Love at Sabarmati, which went even a step further. And they found out how poor people are, shooed away. Communal angle was brought in, and all these things came into picture, which did not exist before the front was designed. So we have to also understand, as a profession, even if it is not designed, there is a front, right? And which
Yeah.
I could understand from your point also, that the way we look at urban parks and forests and all. So I'm just trying to understand, when you are going to work on these senses, which is quite interesting, to be honest. I wish you just focus on those senses and just leave aside the planning part of it. Let others do that part,
Hopefully
and
I
how
can
to
start a
smell
lab.
water. Huh?
Hopefully I can start a lab which does only that
Please,
sometime. Yeah.
smell of the water, which was really nice to hear from you, that deep research can be done on these aspects. Because I think we are almost indifferent to these things now. Touching of the water, seeing is, yes, and as an integral part of waterfront, seeing becomes very much part of it. But then smelling of it, how do you smell it? Is to do this kind of research. So I'm now getting more curious beyond your slides to ask this question. How do you intend to study, especially the smell and the touch part? And when you are giving example from Canada, you are showing through your pictures the very access to the water. Safety is going to come into picture. I remember going to Kerala beach fronts. There were people who were really guarding us to say that this is the line beyond which you cannot go, and all. And it has to be a big responsibility on the local authorities to really ensure on the beach side. Not touching is important, but still measuring of it. It's the method question. Smell, measuring, or are people sensitized towards it? definitely bad smell affects people's visit, but is good smell inviting more people, or are they indifferent to it? And likewise, what does touch mean to them? Is it okay if they're not touching and seeing it? Like, I mean, I don't know if anybody here in this platform right now can go to a beach and not really touch it, not take out their shoes and socks and go to the water and let the water come in. So, I mean, I'm curious, how do you intend to capture that? Hina, would you like to get in here on board in the conversation?
Yes, extremely very interesting, and I have so much is working in my brain right now. But I just want to jump in on the method part of the senses which you brought in. So
Hmm.
I would suggest there are a lot of methods now available from the field of psychology where you study behavioral science, which is not just based on interviews, which could be biased. You know? So
Hmm.
you can I mean, my advice is that there are ways wherein, say, brain mapping is done, and you either simulate, create images, do eye tracking, or you measure the brain activity zones. है ना? So these could help. These are established methods from the field of psychology to measure some of these. So because your uh, research question is based on the human recreation part, and you can't miss the empirical evidences of the senses and how that can be uh, further enhanced through design policy planning, which will be even later on, but this part is missing. So I would advise that think about some of the methods and small samples wherein you can bring in these evidences also as to what is the impact on the on all the senses. Plus another thing which was coming in my mind was, if you are able to get a couple of studies, case studies, pilots where you can do a pre and a post intervention. Say some beach stretch which you found that a project has been announced in terms of creating that, converting it to a more uh, commercial space, a mix of more inviting planned urban space, and then do a comparison. So that will give, for the same conditions, I think it will bring in more richness. That's my suggestion, if you are able to find something. So
Just jumping in, Hina. If I understand you, so the beaches which are untouched for designing as a public realm, and the beaches which are already in the limelight of public realm, and the last part, I'm just trying to reconsider, because that's an interesting way to compare.
yes.
So just to give you an example, like Puducherry and Auroville, they have these allocated beaches, huh?
Mhm.
Where people can go. And then rest of the stretch is, we can say, wilderness or open or not manned. Huh? So is that what you're saying? Over to you. Has taken place in some place, and some places they are just left to what they were.
Yes, I'm saying, say for example, like something which is, say, Sabarmati, before Sabarmati
Hmm.
front, sorry, that
After.
riverfront, yeah, came up, and then afterwards. So pre-post kind of a situation will, uh, from from the long-term utility perspective, as to what the designers and the planners should do, which will be like the
Mm,
future scope of else jump in.
mm,
How do I bring in more people to these spaces, irrespective of the socioeconomic profile, because these have huge relevance for our own human health, which we are not
mm.
realizing. Hmm. So the
Asim,
that was what I say. Yeah.
thank you,
Yeah,
Hina.
thank
Asim,
you.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for your recommendations. And yeah, I think that's something I can um I'm not sure fit within the study I'm planning, but definitely something I am interested in. And you rightly pointed out the methods in psychology, and that's an interesting um direction of my research. I see it's one of the paths I can take. beyond,
Yeah.
after the analysis I conduct. It's honestly, some of the analyses are ongoing, but it's not in a shareable state, so I could not share it.
Yes.
So I would say I'm beyond midpoint of my PhD. So I'm trying to wrap up the analysis and start writing sometime in winter. So all summer and fall, I'm finishing everything I planned, and so there's less scope to add more field work in my
Mm.
dissertation because the proposal has been approved, and there's a bunch of approvals needed if I add something radically new. But I'm definitely interested because I started as a civil engineer, and you can see where I am. I am in in between leisure to tourism planning and urban design
Yes.
planning, kind of. So and some, if I go to health direction, I will be in public health also. And if I go
It's
too
a
much
it's a huge scope.
yeah, if I go multisensorial, probably I will be in some other subject I don't even know about. So, but yeah, I'm open to researching, like taking threads from my current research, and I'm really interested to take methods from other fields. And I have colleagues from psychology, and so I'm actually for the multisensorial, coming back to Mansi's inquiry about how I'm planning to measure smell. So I'm actually looking for a public health school of medicine kind of student right now who has more knowledge about olfactory nerve and the range we can smell. So my initial plan in that direction is to actually take some people, some participants from rural setting who have lived their lives in a rural setting, and some people who have lived their lives in an urban setting, and some who have moved maybe. So I have three distinct group of people to compare their olfactory range, and with regards to water, obviously we're not
Mm.
testing the smell overall, but
Yes.
so I think that would be an start, to understand, because we might have lost people who were born and raised in urban areas all their lives. We may not have so sensitive smelling.
Senses are
We
lost.
just, yeah, so it could be an indication of a huge crisis actually. But
I mean, I'm becoming a little bit greedy here. And will you also study sound and noise for that matter? Because people like me would like to go and sit by a silent
yeah,
water or something. Or some
yeah.
people really looking at the health aspect. Actually, there's a huge scope to work in the health area because urban epidemics is another group which I would love to connect you to is constantly working on this area and looking at on how spatial planning design influence public health.
Hmm.
So Mohammed Kharpur is there working and leading the group. It's also architect urban designers group. But would you also study sound and noise, the spectrum
I
between sound and noise in water,
Oh
or you
yeah,
have rest of your life to do?
I think I could definitely just focus on senses and spend my life, and happily I would happily do it given the opportunity, right? Um,
Absolutely, absolutely.
yeah,
I mean, there's more to do beyond PhD. So wrapping up
yeah,
PhD is a very wise thing to do. But
yeah.
Ritu, your last few words for Asim, and then I'll hand it over to Ekta. And I also have one pressing question, but I'll see if time permits. Over to you, Ritu.
Yeah, thank you, Asim. I would wish you all the best for your research. And it's like Mansi and Hina ma'am have already discussed. It's a huge task, and what you're setting out to do will require you to focus more on what you want to achieve finally. Because right now it's a big spread you have with you, and there are a lot of things you have to consider. But I understand this is the initial stage, so you will be finding your way through. Understanding things, omitting some paths, taking some path which is more suitable for you. So that's a way we generally go about in research. So best of luck for your work, and
Thank you
over to
so
you,
much.
Mansi. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. My last bit of question, thoda sa, otherwise I will have a little bit of a stomach ache if I don't ask that question. Sorry. But because the kind of aspects you are trying to touch in this kind of research, for me, that is unique. Because I will consider them as intangible. When we are looking at waterfronts, its design, its access is for you one tangible part and all. And this is something which has been less studied in architecture, urban design, planning. And you are therefore standing at a crossroad of multidisciplinary. So on one hand, you're talking about a multidimensional space where a lot of things are happening. And it's very difficult to go and do a survey to ask people about the aspects which you are trying to capture, though people go to waterfronts to actually get these senses activated. But it is very difficult for people to translate it into words when you are going to ask them. So that is a challenge I can see from the kind of research you are taking up as your project. But I think this is a unique contribution in this kind of work. So, I mean, what do you think, not only for Asim, but for more scholars from architecture, planning, and urban design can really look at this kind of projects as a future scope? How can they take it further to next level? And I know I'm already requesting you to take noise and do this, but I'm sure there are more scope from this kind of work as you have already laid out. Anyway, whiches are studied less. Where do we go from here for future scholars?
I would definitely say, like every continent has also, region, let's say, has also unique use of waterfronts, right? India, Nepal would have a lot more complexity. There could be livelihood issues linked. There are fishermen being chased, new waterfront is being built and whatnot, right? And here, for whatever history, which I will not dive into, but there is no livelihood left, at least in the urban areas. There is just recreation, right? Um, so I guess first it's essential to understand, I think the focus can start with how the water is being used, and what's the development interest of the state or the province or local bodies. Some want it to be tourist center. They have high ambitions for their waterfront, right? They want to create the next, I don't know, some crazy example, like a seawall. We have a seawall in Vancouver that's pretty popular. Um, so I guess the vision, mapping of the provinces in a country is good. In different local bodies could be also interesting research. That's just takes reviewing planning documents and previous policies they taken, and definitely how people use it. Just site observation work could reveal so many interesting things. So there are easier ways to, yeah, I think, research it.
Interesting. I think if I have to sum it up from my end, I think this kind of study is more humanizing public space. And in your case, it is a waterfront, which is more beach, and looking at the human aspect of it, right from touch to access. Thank you so much, Asim. And I will hand it over to Ekta for summarizing and doing the vote of thanks. Over to you, Ekta. Thanks.
Thank you, Mansi. Thank you, Asim, for the wonderful presentation. If I summarize this conversation, so the important points are that the important thing is that the local people prefer the quiet and the lonely places, and the visitors want lot of facilities. And providing this, is there any challenge the urban planners feel on these facilities, because compromising the local people to provide the facilities to them? And another thing is greenery. This is you said the greenery negative impact at the beaches, and external built-in factors. There is a lot of factors that are affecting at the time which season will come, and the days, the weekends, because the people are busy during the working days and the weekends are the free. But the most important thing that I feel is why people want to go to the beaches, and what is the basic reason. So maybe there are a lot of people who are just going to see the facilities there, to eat and have fun, and some people will just go to just sit quietly in water, just like Mansi and I always prefer a normal quiet place. Just go and sit there and enjoy the waves and the water and the smell. And yes, then another factor that coming in my mind is, as Professor Hina has highlighted, the health. We have then that Hyderabad people will run from the water because of the smell. And on the beaches, we go for once I visited at Goa and Mumbai beach and the Goa beach. We were not happy at all and were saying that is this the beach where people want to go? It's Marina Beach and all. But when we visited to a private beach, as we discussed, a lot of beaches are open for the public, but a lot of builders and all have their private beaches. A lot of hotels which have their private beaches where only the residents can visit. So those beaches are well maintained, clean. Their water quality is also totally different. So my point is, why we can't make some rules and the plannings like this, that every beach is beautiful. And the sensory effects, smell, look, sound. And long back I attended a conference where we learned, all these things are eye opener for me, that how we are destroying the communication system of aquatic animals through a lot of noise. So is there any, during the plannings, if these factors are considered, the health factors of not only the humans, because we just creating everything for the humans only, for the human beings, and as considering that only the humans are living here. So these are the important points I wish to highlight here. And the research point is definitely, as you are into the urban planning and doing the research on this, that the how what are the different factors which affect the people to visit the beaches and how more people can come over there. So yes, definitely the health is the most important factor. So no, you're touching the water, feeling the water, and staying there at the quiet and watching those waves, observing them, that definitely have a very good health effects. People can go there and heal. If we can include the psychology in that, I think lot of the depression and all these things can be healed through this. So there can be the lot of ways the plannings can be done, which can create a proper ecosystem, not only for the humans, but for our natural resources as well as other organisms. That's the take from today's conversation. And thank you so much, Asim. Now it's not taking much time. It's time to say thank you to all and announce the next sessions. So next Friday water session is May 2nd, 2025 at 5 p.m. IST for a discussion on festivals at the Ghats of Kolkata with two lovely ladies from Caltech and I think Mansi.
Lally and Shoma.
Festives and yeah, Kelly and Shoma. Join us on Wednesday for water session on April 30th, 2025 at 5 p.m. IST for a discussion on water and juice, social and economic considerations for decision making. Yes, definitely visit us for on w4w.in for more informations, and also watch our YouTube channel where we have all the recordings of the next sessions. All the information and links are provided in the chat box, and just follow us for the upcoming sessions and learning more from more scholars and different versatile topics. Thank you so much. See you soon.